meeting to order. If you'd join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. So we have a couple of continuances. Why don't we start with those? So appeal number 2904, the applicant Mazel Development LLC, property located at 203 Church Street, request an extension of time for obtaining a permit under section 280-144 of the code for an additional 6 months to December 16th, 2022.
Evening. Nick Keneally representing the applicant. You've seen this one before, and remember, it was tied up because of litigation. There was both litigation of land use appeal, and there was litigation of a quiet title action. That was all eventually resolved in the Court of Common Pleas. And then, of course, he could not get a sewer module. Now, he did sell the premises, and believe it or not, he got one EDU for a sewer module so he can build the premise. So the new owner can now build a home there, finally. So we're just, all they really need to do is to prepare building plans, grading permit, and of course all the structural things, and send it to the township and hopefully get approval for the building permit and then start construction. So we're just requesting a 6 month, additional 6 month extension on the zoning.
So I had the benefit of seeing some of the background on this one, so just so that the rest of the board's aware. So relief was originally granted January 27th, 2014. The last time, at least in terms of what was shown to me, the last time an extension was granted was January 21st, 2021. It was a Zoom meeting, and that extension was granted to August 24th, 2021.
Yeah,
so Nick, can you give a little bit of background on?
That was by Mr. Maury, who was the former owner, because I remember being here or being on the Zoom call when that occurred. Since that time, as I mentioned, he has sold the property. I do have a letter here dated, now this is dated December 2nd, 2020, and it's to Mr. Maury stating that he does have the EDU in order to construct the property. I'll hand that up to everybody, have additional copies. My understanding is the new owner wasn't even aware that he needed this extension until recently. I don't know if he called Kevin or someone at the township told him you have to extend the zoning approval before you can even come in and apply for a permit. So that's what brings us here this evening. As soon as he called me, we made arrangements to file the request for extension. He would be here. I know he is on an airplane to London this evening. And I believe, okay, here, go ahead.
Hi, I'm going to be the realtor for the property. I'm Star Smith. I'm with Keller Williams. Star Smith. Star, S-T-A-R-R. Smith, S-M-I-T-H.
Thank you.
So when did the sale occur?
I have a deed, and the deed is dated, recorded on April 17th, 2021. I'll hand it. Mr. O'Connor needs a copy of it. I only have one other copy. But you can have it. One on the left, right? It's good, right? The deed is dated March 12th, 2021. It was recorded on April 17th, 2021.
Should we do a motion and then board discussion or questions? Okay. I'll make the motion. I'll make a motion to approve the 6 month extension.
Second.
So I'll start. I have reservations on this. the last couple, something else was shared with me this week as well, where a continuance was requested, and it was granted, and apparently our rules allow us as a board discretion to grant this type of request. My hesitation is really just, quite frankly, based on the age of the relief that was granted back in 2014. I mean, we're 8.5 years later, and we don't know what's changed in the neighborhood, if anything, and let alone the plans 8 years ago, what they look like. So, although it was on my motion, I'm going to vote against granting the relief. I think 8.5 years is a long time, and the applicant should come back to us and seek relief again if that's what's necessary.
Rich, I have a question. I don't have to ask Attorney or Kevin. The last time notice was made to the neighbors, what would that date have been? Was it 2014?
I would guess it was when the zoning application was made. Now, as I mentioned, there was some extensive litigation involving it. That did take a couple years to resolve. And I know it also took a while for the EDU request, the sewer module request, to be granted as well.
So do we have a date of the last notice?
Probably was, I would guess, unless Kevin,
The township would have only required notice for when it was in front of this body, so that would have been 2014, but Nick is correct that this did go through extensive litigation right after this board granted the relief, and then there was significant delays in the former property owner, in obtaining the EDU. This came back in front of this board, it was a month or two ago. I met with the new owner who wanted just to sit down to go over the plans to make sure that they were compliant with the relief. It was at that point that he became aware of that there was a lapse. So prior to that, he was unaware, at least the impression that I got sitting with him for the first time, that he was unaware that there was a timeline or time limit on that process.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Mr. Pena, do you have any idea of the timeline of the litigation? How long did that whole thing go?
It was, the last piece of litigation was July of 2016, is when there was a quiet title action brought up also, and that was denied. And that was in July of 2016. And I guess it was 4 years, he wasn't able to get EDU for it.
So the litigation caused a 2-year delay at
Yeah,
least?
right, and then probably the EDU caused at least another 4-year delay.
George?
Yeah, George is the guy next to him.
Your name tag says John, so I'm going to be calling you the wrong name all night.
Since 14, and we had these other legitimate delays, have there been any other extension requests?
Yes, there have been. I know there have been several that I did, or 2 that I did at least, that I have. And I know Mr. Maury himself did a couple as well. I know I did one in 2016. Well, at least when I was involved in the project, I know I continually did them, every 6 months, knowing that we were delayed by litigation and EDUs. And I think Mr. Maury picked it up at some point. And I know that he made several also, because I know I was here during several of them.
So are we still under legal extension, Kevin?
I don't know.
No, the last extension was, I believe, requested by Mr. Maury that went through August, Mr. Chairman, August of 21.
Correct.
And during that time frame from when Mr. Maury had requested it to the time where that expired, the property owner the property ownership transferred from Mr. Maury to the current owner. And again, from my conversations with him, that caught him completely off guard, is the impression that I got, that there was a time extension issue. So I truly believe that he was not aware that that was something, otherwise I would have thought that he would have brought it in front of him, just the impression I got from sitting and meeting with him.
So I think what I heard you say is we're actually out of the bounds of that last
Correct.
extension.
Correct.
Thank
But,
you.
but now my understanding is we do have discretion
Yeah.
to grant late
Yeah.
extensions. So.
Yeah, I know nothing has, if you're familiar with the area, it's the area up by Odoricio Park in the back there, in the back of Odoricio Park, kind of where, I guess it's Church Street, which comes up as you go up Highland Avenue. It comes in to the right. I believe there's maybe a Fairview or something, and then Church. And so it's a small street that has a couple homes on it.
Nick, what was the litigation over?
Well, first it was, they appealed the land use appeal, and that was denied by the court, and then the neighbor filed a quiet title action trying to claim the property through adverse possession, and that was also denied.
It was not because of the variance?
No. Well, the first one was, the land use appeal was because of the variance, and that was denied, but the litigation regarding the quiet title action, the adverse possession, had nothing to do with the variance.
Okay.
I mean, there's been a lot of time and a lot of litigation on this. As I said, I was involved until
I think I was on the
probably just
board.
recently.
I was probably on the board when we did this.
Yeah.
I should remember this.
Quick question,
Okay.
so the August 2021 would have run out January 2022, is that correct?
No, it was extended in January of 2021 through August
So
of
it-
2021.
So it ran out in August?
Ran out in
And is that an extension from 2014?
Yes.
Well, no, there were continual extensions, as
Okay.
Nick mentioned, throughout the way,
But the
that every 6
original-
months, either Nick or Mr. Murray were coming in to do the extension. And primarily, I guess the first year or so, it was because of litigation, but
Right.
then it was, what was been affecting most of the new development was no EDUs and sewer capacity.
And are there any neighbors that have come forward to say, even though they haven't been served notice, that they are in support of the relief granted in 2014?
I know the only notice they would have gotten would be, remember, the notices of the zoning hearings are advertised and published in the newspapers. So, but there would have been no written notice of it, and so, you know.
Have any circumstances changed in that neighborhood and adjoining homes, properties, et cetera, since 2014?
No, it's exactly the same. As a matter of fact, I was looking at one of the surveys today. The adjacent home is basically totally non-compliant, almost like the same situation as this home. It's up pretty much on the property line, you know, with, you know, like a foot from the front yard setback. I mean, the street isn't really, it's called Church Street, but, you know, it's not really a thoroughfare or anything. There's a couple homes on it. It's kind of almost like a private type street.
I don't have Rich's background in it, but I must say, I don't really see where there's a problem. I don't think we should visit more place more burdens on these folks. It doesn't appear that they missed this through some inactivity on their part or some failure to act on their part. It looks like they walked into an open switch, and I don't really see there's any really great need to have them go through any part of the process again at this point. If we have the discretion, and I think we do.
This applicant's totally innocent. I mean, as Kevin said, I know when he called me, he had no idea until he had gone in to see Kevin.
Is it po-
Anything else?
Is
Oh.
it possible to not request that they go through the whole application process, but to put out notice so that affected parties could find out they're affected parties? Because right now, if those homes turned over, they would have no idea, knowing it so many years ago, and it probably wasn't in the sale, in terms, it probably wasn't in the disclosure, which is why the client doesn't know what's going on. So I'm just trying to figure out how we.
You
how we're
could, I
fair
mean,
to-
you, as a zoning board, you can attach conditions to approvals, and this would be no different. So yes, you could do something like that if you wanted.
But are they too late to become a party protestant if we voted yes?
Well, that's a whole nother issue. They could come here and obviously object to the continuance request. And I'd have to think about it a little bit more as to whether or not they could protest the actual grant.
Because they're too late.
No, it'd be way too late for
Yeah.
that, I would think, but I'd have to look at it. But no, certainly the continuance request.
Okay.
Jamie, are you thinking that?
I may have changed my mind, actually.
And there's nothing
Well,
wrong with
I don't
that.
love-
That's what
I-
discussion's
yeah,
all
yeah.
about. So absolutely,
I
until
don't-
there's a roll call, you can change.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I'll explain my reason why out loud, but the passage of time is what bugs me initially, but, you know, considering the fact that they went through an initial appeal of the decision of this board originally, and then an adverse possession claim, and it sounds like at least 6 years' worth of litigation, I wouldn't want to open up that can of worms on them as well, and I think I might agree with John that, you know, hearing that nothing else has changed drastically in that neighborhood, then, you know, I'm not seeing the harm in granting the further continuance, but anyway.
Do we know if the neighbors are the same neighbors?
I believe he is. I mean, but I can't,
And that's the neighbor
Jamie,
in
I
the
can't say that for
litigation?
certain. Yeah, that's the
And
one.
that's the neighbor in the litigation?
Yeah, right,
Okay.
and I haven't, trying to think the last time I've seen him. It's been it's been a while. I assume he's still there. I haven't heard that anything bad happened to him, so.
Nick, do you know if were to deny the continuance, and then he would have to reapply, and obviously that's time, would he lose the EDU?
I don't know. I would guess,
He probably has to file it within a certain amount of time of getting the approval, right? Otherwise, they'll,
right, I would.
that would be what I'm concerned about, because I
would
know
guess-
how hard that is.
Yeah, I know, it's.
It's brutal.
Knows, yeah.
Yeah.
You just can't get him. And I've heard it's gonna be, well.
That would be,
worse.
that would be one of my
Yeah.
big concerns. I know how hard it is to get EDUs, so,
Yeah.
God forbid they just got one, and now you're just like, all right, you can't get it again.
If I put my other hat on, I'm on the board of Delcora as well as the board of RHM. I don't think this is the kind of thing that they would revoke the EDU. And it's also, this is because he's got a failed system or problems with the existing.
No, there was no system, so you had to tie in.
Right, well,
You gotta tie- you have to
we're,
tie in.
RHM is automatically approving any of those.
Well, but as for, John,
Yeah.
further downstream, there's some municipalities downstream who are not happy.
So far, they've all agreed with that concept, Nick.
Anything else? Sure. Brad? John?
I'm in favor.
Jamie? No. George?
Pardon me?
In favor?
No, but John
No.
is.
You'll excuse me, I had a really long day today. And I'm also in favor, so I've lost count, passes, but, yeah, try and push them along.
I'm gonna tell him what we went through right now.
Yeah.
So, he's
Okay.
gotta follow through. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. Okay, moving on. Appeal number 3129, the applicant Miguel Pena, property located at 400 South Wayne Avenue, zoned R2 residential. The applicant is seeking relief from section 280-112.d and 280-112.e of the code to remove the steep slopes to create usable space in the backyard. This is continued from the May 19th, 2022 meeting.
Excuse me.
Mr. Chairman, yeah.
I don't mean to be pushy about my position on the
Okay.
agenda, but I think you jumped over. I'm Christy Flynn on 236 North Aberdeen. I'm letter B. I can wait until after, see if you
I-
prefer me in that order, but
I'm sorry. I'm looking at two different agendas. Mix myself up. All right. My apologies to you. Okay.
if it
No,
pleases you
no,
now, I hope I should be
we'll
quick
go
and
in the
easy.
order. We'll go in the order as the most recent published.
Okay.
So, yep, I'm
Hopefully
gonna
I'll be,
reread that then.
I'll be quick and
We'll
and
hold
out of your-
3129 for a minute.
Thank
Sorry
you.
about that.
No,
Appeal-
I appreciate it.
Appeal number 3111, the applicant James and Christine Flynn, property located at 236 North Aberdeen Avenue, request an extension of time for obtaining a permit under section 280-144 of the code for an additional 6 months to December 27th, 2022.
Thank you so much.
Good evening. Sorry about that.
Good evening. I'm Christy Flynn, the owner at 236 North Aberdeen. I was before you in November requesting relief for your steep slope ordinance. It was granted because of the age of the slopes being most likely man-made, but before there were grading permits. I think you've all already received the education that it's very difficult to get sewer EDUs here, and we have had success in getting our 2 EDUs. We expect to have the commissioners send our planning module forward at their meeting in July, and so I would ask for your extension to this application so that I can follow through that process.
We granted relief in November of 2021. Is that
You
correct?
did, and then your order, or your mailing was in December, and so I'm within the 6 months.
6 months. You're still within the
I'm
first
within
6
the
months.
window.
Perfect, okay. All right, that's okay.
The technicality on that mailer.
Yeah. Any questions from the board? I'll make a motion. I move to approve the request for an additional 6 months under 28144. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Thanks.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Good luck. Okay, now we'll try this one. Appeal number 3129. The applicant Miguel Pena, property located at, actually, you know what? I'm going to hold that for 1 second. Don't I have another extension request, right? Should I bang that out?
There's a continuance request, yes.
Continuance
Yes.
request, right. Should we hear
Yeah,
that, or?
it might be better practice to deal with the continuances first.
I think so. Get them out of here. I'm sorry. We'll get to you in a second, Miguel. I think Nick may have stepped out of the room, so why don't we hold it? Now everybody's leaving on me. I should have said I was unavailable tonight. I feel unavailable mentally, yeah. Sorry, Nick. Yeah, that's okay. I want to handle the continuance request, yeah. So this is on appeal number 3136. The applicant, should I read it? I guess I should. 148 Partners LLC. Property located at 140-148 East Lancaster Avenue, Zone WBOD. I won't read the rest of it unless I need to for the record, but you're seeking a continuance.
Yes, and what happened was failure to advertise. So, continuance is requested. I gave additional 30 days to hear the matter on top of whatever the requirement is, and plus 45 days for an opinion as a result.
Okay. Do I need to make a motion on that, or?
Yes, yeah, it should be by motion.
Okay, fine. I'll make a motion to grant the continuance to place him on the next available calendar.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous.
Thank you, guys.
We'll see you next month. Thanks. Okay, third time. Appeal number 3129, the applicant Miguel Pena, property located at 400 South Wayne Avenue and zoned R2 residential. The applicant is seeking relief from section 280-112.d and 280-112.e of the code to remove the steep slopes to create usable space in the backyard. This is continued from the May 19th, 2022 meeting. Good evening.
Hi, I'm Baron Gemmer. I'm a
Yes.
party to this. From the last meeting, we had agreed that if the applicant sent in information by the deadline of June 3rd, I think, to say that we wanted to go to July, that we would go to July. I saw it on the agenda, queried the solicitor and the zoning officer. There was no extension offered or asked for, and I even texted the applicant like a little over an hour ago, so I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, neither do I. Mr. Gemmer, do you have any idea
What a
if
night.
the applicant was under the impression that this was not taking place tonight? If you do, I mean, I'm just...
Again, I don't want to claim to speak for him.
Yeah.
My understanding is he was thinking it would go to July, but we had kind of explicitly said, matter of fact, I think his words is, there's an outside chance we go to July, so it was going to be the June meeting, but if it wasn't, then he would submit an application to Kevin and forward it to the board, so we wouldn't have to come in here. for
Further
this.
continuance. I honestly, I don't remember the discussion last
Yeah, I actually
time.
went back and played before I emailed everyone when I saw him, I actually played it back a couple times today just to refresh my memory, and that's what it was, but.
Right.
Yeah, and I can confirm that. My recollection was that there was discussion of this possibly going to July. So that's why I asked the question, is it possible the applicant was under the impression that this wasn't going to be heard until July? That's the most I can offer to the board. It's the board's discretion. I mean, you have the option of either denying it for lack of presentation tonight or advising the applicant that, the next listing will be the final listing.
Yeah, I'm inclined to say, and I don't know if I have authority to unilaterally decide, but I'm inclined to say, do we mark things must be heard here for July?
Well, I mean, I think you can, yeah, absolutely. You can make that the point if you're going to grant this continuance, because essentially what you're doing, you're granting it unilaterally, so.
Yeah.
You can condition it on being, no further continuances, absolutely.
Yeah, that's my inclination. I would lean on anybody else from the board.
We
enough time for opinions and stuff like that when they don't ask for a continuance? Because that's one of the portions is they do allow us significant time to write our decision. So how do we do that?
Well, the continuance was conditioned on him agreeing to extending everything, and I remember we had to
Right, that was
essentially
both-
talk him into it at the last
Yeah,
hearing.
that was
so
April and
right,
May, if I
Right,
remember
so that would
correctly.
still apply. I mean, if it's still, the hearing was, in fact, the hearing was started, so this is a continuation of the hearing, not just the application. So until the hearing's concluded, that clock doesn't start ticking on the decision.
And
So-
if I may?
Yeah, of course.
While Mr. Economidis was talking, I did get a text back from the applicant. Yes, I'm out of the country. I assumed we'd get pushed to July automatically. That's not what we said at the May meeting, but that's his hearsay understanding.
Yeah. My gut was to not have them start all over, so. Okay, so I'll make a motion then that we continue appeal number 3129 to the July meeting. Okay, all in favor? Aye. It's unanimous. Okay, we'll see you back. Thank you. Okay. Appeal number 3137, the applicant 1 Pennsylvania Partners LLC, property located at 1 Pennsylvania Avenue and zoned R5 residential. The premises currently is a mixed-use property with 3 apartments and a retail store, John's Village Market. Applicant seeks to add an additional apartment without expanding the footprint of the building. The applicant seeks a special exception under Section 280-101A2 of the code or such other relief required consistent with the exhibits and testimony presented. This, too, is continued from the May 19th, 2022 meeting. So actually, on this application, I am recusing myself, although as the chair, apparently my understanding is that I can still conduct the hearing, but that I won't be participating in questions or board discussion in any way. So, okay.
Mr. Keneally, I'm assuming the applicant has no objection to the chair, even though he's recusing, sitting as chair. Obviously, he won't participate in discussion or vote. Is that fine?
it's
Yeah, I
fine.
mean, you have to say, for the record, counsel, you have to say for the record.
Yes, no objection. I mean, I just shrugged. I mean, I didn't, Actually, I always thought you recused for financial interest, but I don't think there's any financial interest, but whatever. I trust Rich's judgment, okay. This is on the corner of Pennsylvania Avenue and North Wayne. Everyone's, I think, is familiar with it, John's Village Market. Everyone's been there. Everyone loves it. Currently, it is John's Village Market, and it has 3 apartments. And at one point, they actually had a 4th apartment on the 3rd floor, and basically what we're doing is we are converting that 3rd floor to a 4th apartment. That's our request. It is zoned R5, which permits apartment use, but because it is a mixed use, because it has John's Market, you'll see a letter in the file as an exhibit from Kevin saying that we had to come here and ask for a special exception to expand the nonconforming use. We've run the numbers, and you'll see that we're no more than 50% expansion. There is no increase in the building footprint. We are putting in some dormers. It does add approximately 400 some square feet of additional floor area, but even with that, we're still well under the required 50% of increase for the nonconformity, even though the increase in nonconformity is the conformity. But because it's a mixed use, that's why we're here. Actually, we have 2 witnesses. Corey?
Yes, I do. Corey Lonberger, Corey. Last name is Lonberger.
Corey, where do you live?
I live at 513 Midland Circle in Wayne, Pennsylvania.
And what's your relationship to the applicant and owner of the property, One Pennsylvania Partners LLC?
I'm the general partner and the managing partner and general partner.
I'm going to mark, or I have marked as A2, the deed to the property, and you acquired this property in February 17th, 2022?
Yes, sir.
And this is the actual deed to the property?
Yes.
And I'm sure, again, everyone knows where it is, but just as to where it's located, if we look at, or it has it in front of you, the aerial map, it's been marked as A2A, and actually there's a little star when you run the Google search on it. It shows John's Village Market. So you're located at the intersection of Pennsylvania Avenue and Poplar Avenue.
Yes.
And North Wayne Avenue too, obviously, correct?
Yes.
Or actually, it's at the intersection of North Wayne, actually all three in a way, yeah. And it's right near the Wayne train station. As soon as you go under the bridge, it's on the right-hand side.
Correct.
And showing you, you heard in my opening, I had mentioned that I requested an opinion from Mr. Kachansky, and I've marked as A2B both my request and his letter, which stated that since it's a mixed-use non-conforming, we need to obtain a special exception from the zoning board.
Yes.
Okay. And currently, what does the building consist of?
It currently consists of 3 apartment units, John's Market, and the 4th floor, which is being used as storage for the other
Well,
apartments.
actually, third floor, right?
3rd floor, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah, third floor, and it currently is being used as storage?
Correct.
Was that ever used as an apartment?
It was, yes.
But it's been out of use as an apartment for
It's
a number
been
of
out
years?
of use for a number of years.
And your proposal is to add 1 residential unit while keeping the other 3 and the commercial space as well?
Correct.
Are you aware of any prior additions to the building?
No, I am not.
Are you proposing any additional footprint?
No, I am not.
You are slightly increasing the floor area devoted to the apartment use?
Yes.
But you're not increasing any of the dimensional nonconformities that currently exist on the property?
Correct.
I'm going to show you several photos that have been pre-marked as A4. And these photos actually represent the condition of the property.
Yes.
And let's look at the top row first, to the very left. You can just tell the board what that is.
I'm sorry, sir, say that again.
A4,
Yes, that's the
view of,
view of the rear of the building.
okay, and the one in the middle on the top?
That is also the rear and the side of the building on Plain Avenue.
Right.
Is that right, yes.
And then the one to the furthest right on top?
Yes, that is from Plain Avenue as well.
And then looking at the bottom, is that the view from, I guess it would be North Wayne
Yes.
and Poplar?
Yeah, from Poplar, I'm sorry, yes.
And it shows the commercial property, John's Village Market?
Yep, yes.
And again, another view of the middle picture on the bottom row?
Yes.
And then finally on the,
Pennsylvania Avenue. side.
that's Pennsylvania Avenue side, which is the picture to the right on the bottom row.
Yes.
That's all I have for this witness. I do have Brad Geraci, who will go through the plans in more detail.
Any board questions?
Brad?
So Nick, just so I'm clear, the nonconformity is John's,
Yes,
and, okay.
yeah. And we're keeping that, that's staying the same. It's not
Exactly
being
as it's always been.
expanded. Yeah.
All right, thanks, that's all I wanted to clear up.
Yes, I do. It's Brad Geraci, Giresi.
I have marked as one additional exhibit A7, which is a zoning table, and also shows the increase. I'll hand that up now. So Brad, what's your profession?
I'm an architect.
Are you registered in Pennsylvania?
Yes.
And what type of projects do you work on?
A mixture of residential and commercial.
Have you testified previously before zoning hearing boards and townships?
Yes.
And have you been qualified as an expert in architecture in that regard?
Yes.
Any other qualifications? I request that Mr. Gerisi be qualified as an expert in architecture.
Any board questions for Mr. Drews? No, without objection.
I'm going to show you initially the first page of A3, and is that the survey as performed by First Order LLC?
Yes.
And then the second page is a more expanded view of that, correct?
Yes.
All right, so looking at page 2 here, this shows the existing building,
Yes.
correct, at kind of the intersection of Pennsylvania and Poplar Avenue, right on the corner. And it shows that is totally non-conforming as to setbacks, correct?
Correct.
Because here's the building envelope in this dotted line here.
Yes.
Right. And we're not increasing any of the footprint or increasing any of the setbacks at all.
We are not proposing to, no.
And we're not even extending any of the setbacks.
No.
Currently, there, as indicated on the plan, there are 3 parking spaces in this area here.
Yes.
And the proposal is to add 2 additional parking spaces,
Correct.
and that's for the additional apartment unit
To satisfy
to
that.
satisfy the requirement. Now, also, obviously, in this location, it is in the floodplain, right?
Part of it is, yes.
Okay, and that's correct. And this line here is a floodplain line?
Yes.
And we're not adding anything to, in the floodplain?
No.
No impervious, nothing at all. We're leaving the floodplain.
Nothing new is
as it
proposed in the
exists.
floodplain.
All right. And the 2 parking spaces, as you can see, are outside the floodplain and not in the front yard setback as well.
Correct.
Showing the next, which is titled the first floor plan existing. And this shows the commercial space of 944 gross square feet.
Yes.
And are you planning any increase to that commercial space?
No.
Also, this is the existing plan, and it shows Unit 1 being the apartment.
Correct.
And you are proposing, as we'll see later, a small increase in the square footage of that unit, right?
Correct.
And where is that increase coming from?
The increase will be into the existing entry space, all interior space.
Nick, can you just slide that exhibit up so it's fully in? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll make certain everything else gets split up. Okay, showing you second floor plan existing in the group, and currently existing on that second floor is what?
We have 2 apartment units.
And that's apartment 2 and apartment 3?
Correct.
And both these apartment units, as is the apartment unit on Unit 1, they're a little under the requirement,
Correct.
but we're actually enlarging them rather than making them smaller.
We are enlarging Unit 3, but Unit 2 remains the same.
All right. And Unit 3 currently has 418 square feet. As you mentioned, we are enlarging that one that we'll see in a later plan.
Yes.
And then finally, the third floor. And currently, how is that third floor used?
It's storage for the apartments.
Now showing you what's been marked as first floor plan proposed. Does this indicate the slight increase, 556 square feet? In
Yes.
that first apartment, and in this area here is where the increase is occurring?
Correct.
Right in here? Okay. And again, the commercial space remains the same.
Yes.
Showing you Unit 2 and 3, can you describe for the board what is being depicted here and how you're increasing the space for Unit 3?
Sure. Unit 2 is remaining the same square footage, same footprint. Unit 3 is being expanded, proposed addition above the commercial space. As you can see, it goes up to 765 square feet. in order to meet the zoning requirements for minimum size of the unit.
And how is that, you said that is kind of a, enclosing a dormer or something of that nature? Or how do you do that?
This is a full build-out of the floor footprint above the existing commercial space.
Okay. Showing you the third floor plan, and this is the plan that's currently being used as storage,
Correct.
and that is 804 square feet,
The proposed new apartment would be, yes.
and all the apartment size rooms meet code requirements?
In the zoning code, yes.
Right. And as well, where are you picking up some additional space as well?
Yep, so that bedroom you're pointing to there, would be built out above the second floor addition that is proposed above the commercial space.
How much additional floor area are you adding by addition, that is by
Yep,
construction?
so the addition above John's Market, the commercial space, on the second floor and the third floor combined is approximately 467 square feet additional.
Showing you if the mark is A6. Can you describe what A6 represents?
Oh, yeah, so A6 is the south elevation, the exterior elevation of the building. That's along Pennsylvania Ave.
And where, can you show where the addition, can you view what is being added onto the building in this photo?
It's easier to see that in the proposed.
Okay.
That's going to be the last page.
And again, this is the existing of the west elevation.
Correct. And that is actually the front of John's Market at the intersection.
And the east elevation existing.
Correct.
And then the north elevation existing.
Correct, and that's along Poplar Ave. Poplar.
Now, the south elevation, and which street is that along?
Pennsylvania Ave.
Okay, and can you show what is going to be the additional area for it?
Sure. So what? Oh, good. Thank you. So what we have here is the proposed new dormer for the third floor apartment. In order to meet our headroom requirements and be able to increase the footprint of the space that's usable inside, we are proposing this new dormer here. And then over on the left side of the page here, you can see the second floor proposed addition above the commercial space. And that was for unit number 3. And then we have the proposed addition of that bedroom space for the third floor apartment here.
Now, you've also prepared a zoning table that we've marked as A7, is that correct?
Yes.
And that zoning table, it complies with all zoning requirements? It complies, I mean, you have existing nonconformities, correct?
Yes. I just wanna make
As
sure.
to the building itself?
Correct.
And we're not increasing any of those?
We are not increasing those.
And we're not even extending any of those
No.
nonconformities? And it meets all other zoning requirements, impervious coverage, height, building coverage?
Correct.
All right. On the bottom there, can you describe to the board what the bottom building area calculations are?
Sure. So we have essentially 3 columns, existing, proposed, and the proposed change to the units. In the first row, you'll see under the first row, you'll see the commercial space and unit number 1, with the existing for the commercial space remaining the same with a net 0 change to square footage. Then with unit number 1, the existing is a 550 square foot unit. Currently, we're proposing an additional 6 square feet added to that unit. Interior square footage, that's going in that entry space
So that's not additional building, that's already existing, you're just converting it?
within the interior space of the building.
Okay.
On the second floor, you'll see unit number 2 here, going from 523 to remain at 523 with a net 0 increase. Then we have unit number 3, which is increasing from 418 square feet existing to 765 square foot. So we have a net increase of 347 square feet. Then on the third floor for unit number 4, this is the proposed new dwelling going on the third floor. It goes obviously from 0 to what we're proposing is 804 square feet for that unit. So we have a total increase of 1,157 square feet, which accounts for about 47.5% increase.
And of that square footage, only, as we mentioned, approximately 400 67 square feet is actually new building that you're constructing.
Correct.
The rest is all just interior.
Reconfiguration of the interior, yes.
Is this proposal consistent with the current use of the building?
Yes,
You're putting another apartment in, and it's
correct.
apartment building, and it's actually the apartment use is permitted.
The apartment use is, yes.
You're preserving the existing store which services the neighborhood,
The existing commercial space is remaining, yes.
and you are providing additional off-street parking for the additional unit that you're providing?
Yes, the two new spaces are for the new unit, yes.
And there's no building addition?
No. Second and third floor building addition, but no expansion of the footprint of the building.
Do you foresee any material detrimental effect on the neighborhood?
No.
And due to all the reasons we just listed? As a result of all the reasons?
Correct,
we
yes.
discussed. Thank you.
Any questions?
I have a quick question. What is existing right now where the 2 additional parking spaces are being created? What's there now?
Grass.
It's just grass?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? I need a refresher. Should we move as exhibits or?
Yeah, can
public
request
comment?
exhibits,
Yeah.
request the exhibits be made part of the
Sorry.
record, please?
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely, without exception. Any public comment? Seeing none, is there a motion?
I would move that we grant the applicants a special exception under section 280-101, capital A, in parentheses, number 2, in parentheses of the code.
Any board discussion? No? Okay, well, I guess we could take a vote then. Brad?
I'm in favor.
John?
I'm in favor.
Jamie? John? 4-0. Good luck with your project.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Where do you have this thing? Right here.
Yeah, leave it for George. So, hey, George. Just put.
Okay, appeal number 3138, the applicant Kathleen Mary McPeak. How did I do? Trustee of the Kathleen Mary McPeak Revocable Trust, property located at 813 South Ethan Avenue, zoned R1 residential. The applicant requests a variance from section 280-76.A to allow an in-ground swimming pool and related improvements within the mapped 100-year floodplain area, and section 280-78.A1 to perform certain grading in the mapped floodplain area, and any other relief deemed necessary to install the in-ground swimming pool and related improvements. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm George Brosman. I'm here with Kathleen McPeak and her engineers, Chris Pizunas and Aaron Lally. I'd like to hand out some exhibit packs, if that's okay.
Sure.
Did everyone get one? So we're here this evening. We'll have 2 witnesses. It'll be Kathleen and Chris. But basically, the case is to seeking approval to build an in-ground swimming pool to the rear of Kathleen's home. And the issue is that the property, the area in question, is mapped as part of a floodplain district. You'll see that the property is zoned R1 residential district. It's a pretty large property. It's got 2.17 acres. It fronts along South Ethan Avenue. There's a stream on the other side of South Ethan Avenue, which I believe is called Ethan Creek. So it's an off-site stream. And along with that stream, there's a designated 100-year floodplain area that it's mapped by FEMA, and that floodplain area goes from the edge of the stream across South Ithan Avenue and onto most of the flat parts of Kathleen's property. It's my understanding, and you'll hear from Chris, that we're in the type of floodplain zone that FEMA has where they don't do actual floodplain elevations. I believe it's called Zone A. So it can be likely that the mapping is not accurate. You'll hear testimony from Chris that he did do a study of the actual area, and it turns out that the house and an area around the house is not actually within the floodplain, and he's sent that study to the township engineering consultants, and they've given him some feedback on that he'll tell you about. Basically, that I think they agree with the study. So he'll go through that with you. We're seeking relief, as the notice said. I spoke to Kevin about this. There was some confusion early on. The township engineer thought that if we could show that the floodplain levels were not rising, which the study does show, that relief would not be required. However, Kevin thought that relief should be required because the area is still mapped that way. So we proceeded with this application. I think there are places in the code that would say that if you show that the elevation doesn't raise by more than a foot, that relief would not be needed, but we followed Kevin's guidance. And in fact, the study shows not only do we not raise by more than a foot, Chris will tell you, and the study shows that there's no rising of the flood elevations at all from this project. The exhibit package I handed out had a copy of our application, which is Exhibit A1. And now I'd like to have Kathleen sworn in, and then we'll proceed with Chris, if that's okay.
All lowercase. Did you guys hear that? Oh, Kathleen. Oh, Kathleen Mary McPeak is just my name.
Kathleen, in the exhibits attached to the application that was filed, A1A, is that a redacted copy of the deed showing that Kathleen Mary McPeak, trustee, is the owner of the property?
Yes.
And also in the exhibit package, and I can put it out for the camera here, we just got an aerial photo of the area. And this is at A2. Does this show your property and the surrounding area?
Yes, it does.
And could you identify that and describe the surrounding area?
Sure. The property with the red Google dot is my house. Looking at the map to the left is, I believe the address is 805 South Ithan Avenue. It's a property immediately adjacent to the left. To the right, under the trees that you can't see, is the other adjacent property, which is 823 South Ithan Avenue. And then behind, you can see just a little bit there, is 527 South Roberts. And those are the three adjacent properties. You can't see, it's not shown here, but the house behind is actually, it's a wooded and a very steep embankment, maybe 65, 70 degree, very steep angle up. And also the property to the right, that's also elevated, and there's about an acre on each side, an acre on my property and an acre on her property between us. So we can't see each other either. So.
And this Google put a label about the Ithan Creek, is that right?
Correct, yes,
and
that's across the street.
That creek is across the street. We also had in the packet some photographs of your house, and they're labeled A3A through D. Could you refer to these by their letter and describe these photos to the board?
Sure.
Make sure they stay in the camera.
Sure. A3A is the front of my property that faces Ithan Creek. A3B is the rear of my property.
And that shows an existing patio in the rear?
Yes, correct. A3C shows if your back is to my house, facing the back of the property, to the back right is an existing shed that was built at the same time as the house, and a little bridge that goes over a little stream that runs along the back of the property. And A3D shows, again, a view of the back of the property with your back to the stream, looking at the back of the house, and shows where the pool is proposed to go in front of the patio.
Thank you. Have you reached out to the owners of the properties that are adjacent to your property, the ones you identified when you were talking at A2?
Yes.
About this proposal?
Yes, I have.
And what was, were you advised of any concerns?
No, I was not.
That's all I have for Kathleen.
Any questions?
Okay, Chris?
Yes. Chris, C-H-R-I-S, Puzinas, P-U-Z-I-N-A-S.
Maybe you should bring that microphone a little
Can you
closer.
hear me? Okay.
Chris, we have in the exhibit package A4, is that a written summary of your educational and professional background?
Yes.
And are you a licensed engineer in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania?
Yes.
And you've prepared a floodplain study which will identify, do you do that regularly in your work?
I do, yes.
Have you been accepted as an expert engineering witness before this zoning hearing board as well as other boards and commissions?
Yes.
I would like to offer Chris as an expert in civil engineering and floodplain studies.
Without objection.
Thank you. Are you Kathleen's civil engineer for the proposed pool improvements?
Yes.
And as such, are you generally familiar with the property and the surrounding area?
Yes.
Did you supervise the preparation of the plans that we're presenting this evening,
I did.
as well as the floodplain report that we have submitted as well?
Yes.
Turning to Exhibit A5, which is the plan set that we had filed for the record, it's the McPeak Residence Swimming Pool prepared by Bowler Engineering, dated January 25, 2022, revised April 14, 2022, consisting of 3 sheets. Sheet 2 of that plan has existing conditions plan, is that correct?
Yes.
Referring to that, can you describe the existing conditions on the property?
Yes. The property is approximately 2.17 acres. To the east side of the property, there is a steep slope and wooded area. The property is split in the middle with a small stream channel that runs through it. To the west of the property is Ethan Creek. To the north is a residential lot that was described earlier, and also to the south there's another residential lot. You can see on this plan the floodplain line from FEMA that wanders through the site. That is the FEMA Zone A mapping. And everything to the west of that is contained within the 100-year floodplain.
And is that floodplain line basically originating from the Ithan Creek across the road?
Yes.
Can you comment about the trees on the property?
On the south side of the property, below the house here, there are trees located. They appear small on this plan, but they are a 16-inch diameter tree, a 40-inch diameter tree, and a 30-inch diameter tree.
And some of those trees were shown on the photographs that Kathleen presented?
Correct.
But the area where the pool is being proposed is relatively free of trees, is that right?
Yes.
I mentioned in my opening remarks about Zone A. Since you're under oath and you're the expert, can you explain what the significance of Zone A floodplain mapping is?
Yes, so there's 3 different zone designations. Zone X is if you are out of the 100-year floodplain. Zone A is a mapped floodplain line that does not have an elevation given to it. And AE is a mapped floodplain with an elevation. So you can see this line does not follow any of the contours here. It is Zone A, and that's why it kind of just goes through the property.
And in your experience, when there's a Zone A, meaning that it was mapped without having actual elevations, is it often true that the mapping is not accurate?
Yes, since it doesn't follow elevations of contours, the mapping is typically not accurate.
And let's go back to sheet 1 of your plan set. This is the proposed plan, correct?
Yes.
And can you explain the proposed improvements?
Yes. The proposal is a swimming pool in the rear of the property shown here. The swimming pool is 15 feet by 33.5 feet and has 3 feet of pool decking around it.
In your experience, is the pool size of 15 feet by 33.5 feet smaller than a typical residential pool?
Yes, this pool is smaller than typical for a rectangular pool. We generally see 20 by 40 as a common size.
And what's proposed by way of decking around the pool?
There's only 3 feet of decking proposed around the entire pool, and that is allowing them to utilize the existing patio in the rear of the house as more of a seating area and just having a walkway around the pool.
And for the record, are in-ground swimming pool and related improvements a permitted use in the R1 district?
Yes, they are.
And but for the floodplain issue that we're here about, does this proposed swimming pool and the related improvements comply with the applicable criteria, the R1 district regulations, including impervious coverage and setbacks?
Yes.
And what will be the impervious coverage increase as a result of this, and what will the total amount be?
So we are only proposing 499 square feet of impervious coverage to stay under the stormwater management threshold, and the total coverage for the lot will be 7.6%.
And what would be permitted on this lot under the R1 district?
22% coverage.
Did you prepare a floodplain analysis for the property that included these proposed improvements?
Yes, I did.
And we submitted that floodplain analysis along with the application, correct?
Yes.
And had you also submitted that to the Township civil engineering consultant firm, the Gannett Fleming firm?
Yes.
And for convenience, we've included another copy of that study at Exhibit A6, is that right?
Yes.
And was this floodplain analysis prepared in accordance with commonly accepted engineering practice for such a study?
Yes.
Can you briefly describe what you did and what the conclusions of the study were?
Yes. So for a floodplain study, we have to analyze different cross-sections within the floodplain area and analyze the amount of water flow going through them to determine an actual elevation. We did 3 cross-sections as part of our study, one at the northern property line, one at the southern property line, and one in the middle of the site through the improvements. What we wanted to analyze was if there was any adverse impact upstream or downstream of our site by us causing potential damming with grading, which would cause a rise in flood elevation above our site, or if we were increasing the flow through our site and potentially creating a rise in flood elevation downstream of our site.
And did you also, in addition to considering the impacts, did you take a look at whether the mapping was accurate?
Yes, we compared our results to both the mapping and the impacts. Our floodplain line differs from the FEMA floodplain line.
And there's an exhibit at the end of the study that shows that, and we have another copy we will show. Is that correct?
Yes.
While we get to that, Have you received feedback on this floodplain study from the township engineering consultant?
We did.
And at Exhibit A7, is that a copy of an email that your office recently had with Roger Phillips of Gannett Fleming?
It is.
And he concurred with the analysis?
Correct.
You have here the floodplain exhibit, which is at the end of the study, which we also included, I believe, as another, also for convenience at Exhibit A8, or no?
It's still in the study.
Oh, I'm sorry, we didn't call it out as a separate exhibit, but it is at the end of the flood study, correct?
Yes.
Can you walk the board through what this exhibit shows?
Yes. So this exhibit shows in red the 3 cross sections that were drawn starting at the downstream end of the site, 1, 2 through the middle of the site, and a third going through the top property line. It also shows the resultant floodplain elevations from our study. The green line shown is what the results were from our study, and you can see how it differs from the FEMA line, which is here. It's the 2 dots and a dash line that runs up further and then down to the site. So our study actually shows in some areas an increase in floodplain area and in other areas a decrease. It also shows that the elevations around the house are high enough that they are out of the floodplain area for the 100-year.
So that plan there, there's a big gray area and then a white area in the middle of the gray area. What are those colors showing?
The gray area is the area contained within the 100-year floodplain from our study. The white area is area not within the 100-year floodplain.
So the house and much of the area around the house is not actually within the 100-year floodplain, correct?
Correct.
And then there's a cross-hatched area around the edge of the pool. What does that signify?
So as part of our relief that we're seeking, we need to do some grading to flatten out the area in the rear of the property to install the swimming pool. So the grading lines that are shown around the pool to the east are impacting the floodplain that we studied, and we had to reanalyze it based on the new contours to see if there was any impact. With the new grading, this black floodplain line here becomes the new floodplain elevation, but there's no impact to the floodplain elevation itself.
So what you're saying is if you do that grading to make the level area for the pool, that will result in the entire pool and the coping and the area around it and the diagonal lines being also outside of the 100-year flood elevation?
Correct.
And you also analyzed that if you did that relatively minor grading, that there would still be no rise at all in the 100-year flood elevation. Is that right?
That's correct.
Even though the floodplain study shows that the proposed pool and the related improvements will not be within the actual floodplain area and will not increase flood elevations at all, we have nonetheless sought a variance from 28076A, which sets forth the permitted uses in the floodplain district. Is that right?
Yes.
The floodplain ordinance has standards for a floodplain variance. Is that correct?
Yes.
And they're at 28081A?
Correct.
And for the board's convenience, if anybody wanted to look, we just put a copy of the floodplain regulations at Exhibit A8. We probably won't go through them in great detail, but have you reviewed the standards under 81A for floodplain variance?
Yes.
And does your report go through all of the standards and explain how the project complies?
Yes, we included in the report all the zoning provisions and how we comply.
And is the gist of those standards that the work in the floodplain should not increase the 100-year flood elevation by more than a foot?
Yes.
And in fact, your study shows you're not increasing the flood elevation at all, correct?
Yes.
We also identified Code Section 28078A, which relates to grading. What relief has been requested regarding that provision?
Because we're showing grading within our calculated floodplain, we are requesting relief. We are requesting relief because we are showing grading within our calculated floodplain.
So we need relief to perform that grading?
Yes.
But it's your testimony that that grading will have no impact and will not cause any rise in the floodplain level?
Correct.
And for the board's information, we won't go through it unless you like, but in the floodplain study, Chris had put all of those standards and explained compliance. Moving on to some general testimony, which I often present for dimensional variances. In your professional opinion, are there unique physical conditions of the property that are necessitating the required relief?
Yes, based on its proximity to Ethan Creek and in the eastern side of the property having a stream and then steep slopes with a wooded area, the property has unique grading conditions.
And Ethan Creek being there carries with it that FEMA mapping, correct?
Yes.
In your professional opinion, is the grant of the requested relief related to the floodplain, will that allow for a reasonable use of the property?
Yes.
And that a pool is permitted in the R1 district?
Yes, and we meet all the requirements.
In your professional opinion, has the relief sought been minimized?
Yes, both from the reduced pool size and reduced pool decking that we're showing and the location chosen for the pool.
And also, would the fact that there's no rise at all in the 100-year flood elevation be an indication of minimizing the relief, in your
Yes.
opinion?
Yes, that is correct.
And the very small amount of impervious coverage being added?
Yes, that will not pose an impact.
Um,
That will not pose an impact.
Is that also, in your opinion, an indication that the relief is minimal?
Yes.
In your professional opinion, have these conditions been self-created by the applicant?
No.
In your professional opinion, will the variances alter the essential character of the neighborhood or the zoning district in which the property is located?
No.
In fact, this will just remain as a residential use?
Correct.
In your professional opinion, will granting of the requested relief from the floodplain zoning regulations create any adverse impact on any other property or the public health, safety, and welfare?
No.
That's all I have for Chris.
Any questions?
Chris, remind me of the definition of floodplain for FEMA.
So that is the elevation that the 100-year storm event would come up to.
And it has to be from a stream or a run?
Yes.
Not,
It has to be from some kind of channel.
right, not just cross property?
Correct.
Because I've lived there in that area for about 40 years, and I have seen water on the property, but does not appear to be from Ethan Creek. Because Ethan Creek floods into the park rather than towards the house.
In fact, I forgot to ask Kathleen, that was one of our questions. I forgot what she has seen there on her own property.
Yeah, so I bought the property the end of July 2019, and within days of me moving in twice, it was the end of July or early August, but within like 3 days of each other,
Yeah, yeah, 2 months.
2 times, water came down, and I assume it's from the creek that it flooded, but what it looks like, it comes down the street. It goes down, like if we're on the map, it comes down the street, and then here's the driveway. It goes down the driveway and then goes straight back and connects to the creek. So that's the path that the water takes.
And did it go around your house in the area we're talking about? Like the
No,
white area?
it did. I mean, it did to the extent there, but it doesn't come anywhere near the house or back in the main part. No.
Right.
That left top side, that's where it goes.
That's all I have.
Anyone else?
Chris, just one question, just so I understand for going back to the screen. Obviously, the white portion is your analysis of the boundaries of floodplain. When you're disturbing the area on the east side, the black line around the edging now becomes the new floodplain.
Correct.
Okay. And your testimony is by doing that, you're not enlarging the floodplain in any other direction, meaning this, let's say the back green one might go a little bit more east if you were disturbing it. I realize we have steep slopes, but if it was flat land, is that what the result would be? Is that what you're looking for?
The result from this grading is that there's not an increase in elevation. So what this elevation was here, we are flattening this out so it becomes the same elevation here.
So by here and here, you're pointing to the middle of the pool and the edge?
Yeah, so roughly in the middle of the pool on the cross-section line where the green mapped floodplain line from our study of existing conditions is, that elevation with the new grading translates out to the further east point. So for example, if this was, I'll just say, elevation 225, by the time we complete this grading, this is now elevation 225.
I guess I'm more doing a what if, which was if by doing this disturbance, it would be bad if it affected the floodplain, right?
Correct.
Okay, so meaning, and all I'm asking is the affection of the floodplain would be it moves from where it was on your map to somewhere else.
Correct.
Probably more east, again, assuming that it wasn't steep slope. And obviously, I'm conscious that most of the disturbances on the east side, which again, you're going towards slope, but you can't say for sure if there's going to be any disturbance to the north, because you didn't study that.
Disturbance to the north on our property or the property?
Even to, it would most likely be to the adjacent property, but.
So we studied, each of these red lines represents a cross-section that we analyzed. So this is the cross-section at the north property line, and there was no change.
No change, okay,
On
good.
there based on the additional work that we did.
Awesome, okay, that's what I want to know. Awesome,
Okay.
that's great.
So, and likewise, there's a red line on the other side of the property, no change there either?
Correct.
Anyone else?
That's all
Okay.
we have. I would ask that our exhibits be entered into the record.
Without objection. Any public comment? It doesn't look like anybody's here. All right. Do I have a motion?
Or just to be clear, you were either asking for a variance or by right, right?
Yeah, I had discussed that with Kevin. He felt we should ask for the variance.
Do you have a preference?
I don't. Whatever the board, I felt that it could be approved either way. I don't know how Kevin feels. We didn't want to be at odds with Kevin, so we feel we made the case for the dimensional variance. But either way, Kathleen just wants to have a pool.
She just wants to have it, I get it, yes.
Brad, I could probably address that for you very quickly in terms of that. It's been my interpretation that any disturbance in the floodplain requires a variance. And then as part of that process, it's the applicant's responsibility to demonstrate that there's not an increase in the 100-year floodplain as a result of that, hence the engineer studies. And if there are, that then there are accompanied, as noted in 28076, accompany downstream improvements to then mitigate that so that there is a net zero impact to the floodplain. So that's been the interpretation that we've been running with on these types of things, just because of the nature of flooding issues in the township and the seriousness.
Awesome, thank you. I'm good, that's it.
You want to make a motion then, Brad?
Yeah. Sorry, to approve the variance under section 28076A and in 28078A1 in accordance with the plans presented.
Second.
Any board discussion? No? Okay, well, call a vote then. Brad?
I'm in favor.
Aye. John? In favor. Jamie? John? Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, good luck with the project. Okay. All right, so that's the agenda for tonight, and we will see you in July. Thank you.